Have you ever cried out to God and felt the silence pressing in on you? Have you ever prayed with every ounce of your strength, begging for a sign, a glimpse, a whisper from heaven, only to hear nothing but the sound of your own breathing? My friends, I want to tell you something that will shake your soul and awaken your faith. Sometimes the silence of God is not His absence. Sometimes the silence of God is His greatest teaching. Sometimes the silence is His way of saying, will you trust me even without the sign you're asking for? We live in a world that is addicted to proof. We want evidence before we believe. We want the light to shine before we take the step. We want doors to swing open before we move our feet. But God does not train His people to walk by sight. He trains His people to walk by faith. And faith is not born in the moment of signs and wonders. It is born in the moments when there are no signs at all, when there is nothing to hold on to, but the unshakable truth that God is still in control. Do you realize that some of the most powerful moments in your life will come not when God shows you everything, but when He shows you nothing? Because that is where trust is forged. That is where you learn to rely not on feelings, not on evidence, not on outward circumstances, but on the character of God Himself. God does not need to prove Himself with signs. He is God whether He gives you a sign or not. He is faithful whether you see it or not. He is working whether you feel it or not. And the question is, will you still trust Him when there is no confirmation? No miracle, no handwriting in the sky. There are people listening to me right now who have been waiting for years for an answer. You've prayed, you've cried, you've begged God for direction, for healing, for provision, and you're still waiting. You've said, God, if you would just show me one sign, I would trust you fully. But here's what I want you to hear. God is teaching you to trust Him without the sign, because the sign is not what sustains you. His word is what sustains you. His presence is what sustains you. His promise is what sustains you. Signs can fade. Feelings can change. Circumstances can shift in a moment. But when your trust is anchored in God alone, you are unshakable. God is calling you into a faith that is not fragile. A faith that does not depend on constant reassurance. A faith that is strong enough to stand even in the silence. That is the kind of trust that moves mountains. That is the kind of trust that carries you through the storm. Do not mistake God's silence. For abandonment, the silence of God is often the classroom of God. He is teaching you patience. He is stretching your faith. He is stripping away your dependence on what you can see and feel, so that you learn to depend fully on Him. Think about it. If God gave you a sign every time you asked for one, you would lean on the sign, not on Him. If God confirmed every step before you took it, you would walk by certainty, not by faith. And yet, it is faith that pleases God. It is faith that transforms lives. It is faith that brings you into the deep waters where miracles happen. There are people who spend their entire lives chasing signs, waiting for proof, waiting for the perfect conditions before they take the first step. And because of that, they miss the blessing. They miss the breakthrough. They miss the joy of seeing what God can do with a heart that says, God, I don't see it, but I trust you. I don't feel it, but I trust you. I don't have the evidence, but I trust you. You see, real faith begins where human logic ends. Real trust begins when the evidence runs out. Real surrender begins when the signs disappear. And that's where God wants to bring you. Not because He delights in withholding, but because He delights in strengthening you. He wants you to have the kind of faith that cannot be shaken by silence, the kind of faith that cannot be destroyed by doubt, the kind of faith that cannot be toppled by delay. Right now, some of you are in the waiting room of life. You're waiting for healing, waiting for provision, waiting for direction. And it feels unbearable at times. But let me tell you something. Waiting is not wasted when God is involved. Waiting is the place where faith grows. Waiting is the place where trust is tested and proven. Waiting is the place where God prepares you for what He has already planned. And when the time is right, when your faith has been refined, He will move in a way that leaves no doubt it was His hand all along. But until then, He is asking you one question. Do you trust me without a sign? Do you trust me enough to take the step without knowing what's on the other side? Do you trust me enough to keep walking when the path is dark? Do you trust me enough to believe that I am working even when heaven seems silent? That is the test of true faith. That is the proving ground of trust. You see, if your faith depends on signs, then your faith is shallow. But if your faith is rooted in God's character, then your faith is deep, unmovable, and eternal. And when the storms of life rage against you, you will not be swept away, because your trust is anchored in something greater than circumstances. It is anchored in God Himself. Let me ask you this. What is stronger, the one who always gets confirmation before moving, or the one who keeps walking in the dark, trusting that God is guiding every step? Which life is richer? The one that only believes when there are fireworks in the sky, or the one that believes even in the silence? Which faith is greater? The one that demands proof, or the one that clings to God without any proof at all? Then hear me tonight. God is not preparing you for a life of weak faith. He is preparing you for a life of unshakable trust. And unshakable trust cannot be built on signs and wonders alone. It is built in the stillness, in the waiting, in the silence where you feel nothing yet choose to believe everything. That is where the roots of faith dig deep. That is where your soul learns to lean, not on what it sees, but on who God is. And let me tell you, God is faithful whether you feel it or not. God is good whether you see it or not. God is guiding you whether you understand it or not. There comes a moment when every man and woman of faith must walk without a visible torch lighting the path. It is the night journey of the soul. It is the place where doubt whispers in your ear and fear tells you to turn back. And in that place, you must decide, will I trust God even here? Will I move forward even without the sign? Will I hold steady even when the sky is dark? My friend, if you can trust God in the dark, then you will see His glory in the light. But if you only wait for the sign, you will never know the power of pure, raw faith. Signs are temporary, but trust is eternal. A sign may confirm you for a moment, but trust sustains you for a lifetime. God is calling you into a deeper dimension where your faith is not tied to circumstances, but to His eternal power. He is asking you to lift your eyes from the horizon of signs and set your gaze upon Him alone. Because if you can trust God without a sign, then no storm, no silence, no trial will ever shake you from His presence. Think about the times in your life when you felt abandoned, when heaven seemed silent, when every door closed in your face, and yet here you are, still standing. Was it the sign that carried you through? Or was it the unseen hand of God holding you when you could not see Him? Do you realize that you would not have made it this far if God had not been guiding you every step of the way? Even in silence, He was speaking. Even in stillness, He was moving. Even in delay, He was working for your good. There is a reason why God sometimes withholds the sign. Because He knows how easily our hearts can become addicted to proof. He knows how quickly we shift from worshiping Him to worshiping the experience. He knows that if He gave us constant confirmation, our faith would never grow, so He calls us higher. He says, trust me. Not because of what you see, but because of who I am. Trust me, not because of the evidence, but because of my promise. Trust me, not because I prove it every day, but because I am God and I cannot fail. And how powerful it is when a soul reaches that place, when you no longer beg for signs, but instead anchor your life in God's character. When you no longer demand proof, but instead declare, God, I trust you in silence just as much as I trust you in blessing. That is when your life becomes unshakable. That is when peace floods your soul, even in the middle of chaos. That is when strength rises in you that the world cannot explain. But listen carefully. This does not mean the silence is easy. The silence of God can test you like nothing else. It can strip away every comfort, every assurance, every crutch you leaned on. It can leave you with nothing but a choice to believe or not to believe. And that is the sacred crossroad of faith. At that crossroad, heaven leans close. At that crossroad, God watches the depth of your trust. And at that crossroad, the strongest declarations of faith are made, not with words, but with endurance. Do you understand that when you choose to trust God without a sign, you are declaring something louder than any sermon? You are declaring that God is greater than your need for proof. You are declaring that God's character is enough. You are declaring that His silence is not a prison, but a process, not a punishment, but preparation. That is the testimony that shakes the foundations of fear. That is the kind of trust that changes generations. Perhaps right now you are in a valley, waiting for a sign to tell you what to do next. And all you hear is silence. Do not despise that silence. Do not curse it. Do not run from it. For in that silence, God is shaping you. He is carving away doubt. He is polishing your faith until it shines. He is preparing you for a greater season where your trust in Him will unlock blessings you could never have imagined. And here is the truth. When the sign finally comes, when the breakthrough finally arrives, it will not be the sign that makes you strong. It will be the faith you built in the silence that allows you to stand and rejoice. The sign may confirm what you already believed, but it is the silent trust that will have carried you there. That is why God teaches you to trust without a sign, because He wants your strength to come from Him, not from circumstances. There is something extraordinary that happens when you stop asking God for signs and start declaring your trust in Him without them. You begin to discover a strength within you that you never knew existed. You begin to rise above fear because you are no longer waiting for circumstances to tell you whether God is with you. You already know He is. You no longer tremble at uncertainty because you are not leaning on what you see. You are leaning on the eternal arm of God. That is when trust becomes unshakable, because it is not built on the fragile foundation of evidence, but on the unchanging nature of God Himself. So many people weaken their own faith because they are constantly searching for a sign. They pray for a dream, a voice, a sudden miracle, something to make them feel secure. But let me tell you, security that comes from signs is shallow and temporary. True security comes from the knowledge that God is who He says He is, whether or not He shows you anything today. The greatest victories in life welcome not when you see, but when you believe without seeing. For when you can stand in the silence of heaven and still declare, God is faithful, then you have touched the deepest power of faith. Think about how God develops strength in the natural world. A tree does not become strong because the wind never blows. It becomes strong because the wind does blow. Muscles are not built because there is no resistance. They are built because there is resistance. And in the same way, faith is not strengthened when signs are everywhere. It is strengthened when signs are nowhere. God allows the silence because He is growing you. He allows the waiting because He is stretching you. He allows the lack of formation because He is forming in you the kind of trust that can withstand anything. Do you see what God is doing in your life? He is teaching you not to live on emotional highs, but on spiritual depth. He is teaching you not to depend on quick fixes, but on eternal truths. He is teaching you not to crave the visible, but to lean on the invisible. Because the visible world will shake, but the invisible power of God will never be shaken. That is why He asks you to trust Him without a sign. Because when everything around you changes, you will still have an anchor that cannot move. Let me remind you of something important. Signs are for moments, but trust is for a lifetime. Signs may get your attention for a season, but trust will carry you through every season. Signs may stir your emotions for a day, but trust will give you peace in the middle of the storm. Signs may encourage you for a moment, but trust will hold you steady until your last breath. Do not live your life chasing signs. Live your life anchored in trust, because signs can vanish, but God never does. And here is something you must understand. Trust without a sign is the purest form of worship. When you say, God, I believe you even when I see nothing, you are offering Him a gift greater than any song, greater than any ritual, greater than any outward act. You are offering Him your heart without conditions. You are saying, God, you do not need to prove yourself to me. I trust you because you are God. And that, my friends, is the kind of trust that shakes the very gates of doubt and fear. I know there are people listening who are wary. You've prayed and prayed, but the silence has been long. You've begged for a sign, but the heavens seem closed. You've wondered if God has forgotten you. Hear me clearly. God has not forgotten you. The silence is not a sign of neglect. It is a stage of growth. God is not ignoring you. He is investing in you. He is allowing you to build the kind of faith that will sustain you in ways you cannot yet imagine. The silence is shaping you, not destroying you. It is in the silence that you learn to stop asking, where is the sign? And start asking, where is my trust? It is in the silence that you discover the difference between a shallow belief and a deep conviction. It is in the silence that you begin to realize God's presence is not always loud, not always obvious, but it is always there. Just as the roots of a tree grow deeper in darkness beneath the soil, so your faith grows deeper in the unseen work of God. Do not despise the days without signs. Do not run from the seasons of silence. They are holy ground. They are sacred classrooms. They are the hidden chambers where God Himself is at work within you. And one day, when you look back, you will see that it was not the signs that made you strong. It was the silence. It was not the confirmations that built your trust. It was the unanswered prayers, the dark nights, the quiet seasons that formed in you the faith you carry now. And let me tell you, when you finally learn to trust God without a sign, you become dangerous to fear. Fear loses its grip on you because fear feeds on uncertainty. But you have learned to trust in the God who never changes. Doubt loses its power over you because doubt demands proof, but you have learned to walk without it. The enemy loses control over you because the enemy thrives on visible discouragement, but you have learned to cling to the invisible power of God. That is why trust without a sign is not weakness. It is victory. Let me tell you something that will ignite your soul. When God asks you to trust Him without a sign, it is not to weaken you, it is to reveal a power within you that only the silence can awaken. The absence of signs is not the absence of God. It is the presence of a deeper lesson. God is not testing you to see if you will fail. He is training you to see if you will rise. And when you rise in the silence, when you stand without a sign, when you declare, God, my trust is in you alone, then heaven itself witnesses that your faith is real. This is the secret many do not understand. A sign can strengthen your moment, but trust without a sign strengthens your eternity. Anyone can believe when the path is lit, but it takes a soul anchored in God to walk forward when the path is hidden. Anyone can rejoice when doors swing wide open, but it takes a heart truly surrendered to God to lift its voice in praise when every door remains closed. That is the kind of faith God is shaping in you. The kind of faith that is not dependent on signs, but rooted in His very being. Do you know why this matters so much? Because life will not always give you signs. You will face situations where there is no clear answer, no open door, no instant solution. If your faith depends on signs, you will crumble in those moments. But if your faith depends on God, you will stand firm no matter what happens. Trust that is dependent on signs is fragile. Trust that is dependent on God is unshakable. There is a depth to trust that only silence can produce. In silence, you are stripped of every crutch, every assurance, every visible reminder, and left only with God Himself. And that is enough. That is more than enough. Because when you discover that God is all you need, then you realize He was always enough. The silence teaches you to see beyond circumstances. It teaches you to believe beyond feelings. It teaches you to walk by faith when your senses scream for proof. That is when your trust in God becomes unbreakable. Hear me. God does not want you to live a life of shallow faith, tossed around by every circumstance, weakened by every silence. He wants to make you strong. He wants to give you the kind of faith that storms cannot drown, that trials cannot crush, that silence cannot break. And the only way to build that kind of trust is to remove the signs and see if you will cling to Him anyway. That is why you must stop asking, why is there no sign? And start declaring, my trust is in God, with or without the sign. Some of you are in the middle of a season where everything feels hidden. You are asking for clarity, but God is giving you silence. You are asking for direction, but the path looks foggy. You are asking for a sign, but nothing appears. Do not be discouraged. God is closer than you realize. Silence is not His retreat, it is His refining. He is refining your heart, sharpening your faith, molding your character. And one day, when the silence breaks and the answer comes, you will realize that what God built in you during the silence was far greater than the answer itself. The truth is, God is not only interested in giving you what you ask for, He is interested in making you into who you are meant to become. Signs can confirm a moment, but trust shapes a lifetime. God is shaping you for something far greater than the sign you seek. He is shaping you for endurance, for strength, for spiritual authority, and for a testimony that cannot be shaken by silence. That is why the silence feels so heavy, because the trust it is building is so valuable. Never forget this. Signs may guide you for a day, but trust will carry you for a lifetime. A sign may bring temporary assurance, but trust will give you eternal peace. A sign may help you in one situation, but trust will sustain you in every situation. God does not want you dependent on fleeting confirmations. He wants you anchored in His eternal reality. That is why He is teaching you to trust Him without a sign, because He is giving you something that will last forever. So what should you do when you find yourself in the silence of God? Do not panic. Instead, lift your eyes higher. Say to yourself, God is here even if I do not feel Him. God is working even if I do not see Him. God is guiding even if I do not understand Him. Refuse to let the silence shake your faith. Let the silence strengthen your faith. Refuse to let the absence of signs weaken your trust. Let the absence of signs deepen your trust, because every moment you choose to believe in silence, you are building a faith that nothing can destroy. Do not think for a moment that God is unaware of your struggle. He sees every tear. He hears every prayer. He knows every longing of your heart. And if He has chosen silence, it is because silence is the teacher your soul needs right now. Silence is not punishment. It is preparation. Silence is not rejection. It is refinement. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness waiting to be revealed in its time. There will come a day when you will look back on this season of silence and realize it was one of the most important chapters of your life. You will say, I did not see a sign, but I learned to trust God. I did not hear a voice, but I learned to rely on Him. I did not get the answer I wanted in that moment, but I received something far greater. I received faith that cannot be broken. And that faith will carry you through storms you cannot yet see, trials you cannot yet imagine, and victories you cannot yet comprehend. That is why God is teaching you to trust Him without a sign, because He loves you too much to let your faith remain shallow. He is pulling you deeper, stretching you further, lifting you higher. He is saying, will you trust me when there is no evidence? Will you love me when there is no sign? Will you walk with me when the path is dark? And if your answer is yes, if you will trust Him without the sign, then you will discover that what He gives you in return is greater than any sign could ever provide. When God removes the signs, He is not leaving you blind. He is giving you a vision that cannot be taken away. Signs fade, but vision remains. And vision is not something you see with your eyes. It is something you carry in your spirit. Vision is the certainty that God is guiding you even when your path looks uncertain. A vision is the assurance that God's promises are greater than your present reality. And when you have that vision, you no longer tremble when signs disappear, because you know that your life is built on the solid foundation of God's Word and His faithfulness. Too many people spend their lives chasing proof when what they really need is to cultivate trust. They chase signs like a thirsty traveler chasing a mirage, never realizing that the true oasis is not in the sign, but in God Himself. A sign can refresh you for a moment, but God can sustain you forever. A sign can give you direction for a day, but God can carry you through every day. This is why God withholds signs at times, because He is weaning you off the temporary and drawing you into the eternal. Do not be fooled into thinking that trust without a sign is weakness. No, trust without a sign is the highest form of strength. It is easy to trust when the evidence is clear, but real power is found in trusting when there is no evidence at all. It is easy to move forward when the path is obvious, but real courage is found when you step forward in faith, guided only by the assurance that God is with you. This is why the silence of God is never empty. It is the forge where warriors of faith are made. And let me tell you something even deeper. Signs can sometimes deceive, but trust in God never will. If you rely on signs alone, you can misinterpret them. You can mistake coincidence for confirmation, emotion for direction, and timing for approval. But when you anchor your trust in God alone, you will not be swayed by confusion, because your foundation is not in shifting signs. It is in the eternal rock of His presence. Signs may lead you to questions, but trust in God will always lead you to peace. There is a freedom that comes when you no longer demand signs. You are no longer tossed back and forth by circumstances. You are no longer dependent on feelings. You are no longer enslaved to conditions. You walk in the kind of freedom that says, God, even if I see nothing, I will still move. Even if I hear nothing, I will still believe. Even if I feel nothing, I will still worship. That freedom is the mark of a soul that has discovered the secret of unshakable faith. You see, God is not trying to give you a fragile hope. He is trying to give you a durable hope. And durable hope is not built on what is seen. It is built on what is unseen. Durable hope does not collapse when signs. Durable hope stands tall because it knows that God is greater than any sign. That is why the silence is not your enemy. The silence is your builder. The silence is your teacher. The silence is your companion on the road to unbreakable trust. And here is the beauty of it. When you learn to trust God without a sign, you stop living for external confirmation and start living for internal conviction. You stop asking, God, show me something, and start declaring, God, I know you are something. You stop begging for flashes of proof and start living in the steady glow of faith. And that faith transforms everything. It transforms your outlook, your choices, your strength, your resilience. It gives you the courage to keep walking when others give up, because you are no longer moved by signs. You are moved by God. Consider this: the greatest leaders of faith in history were not remembered because they followed signs. They were remembered because they trusted God when there were none. They stood when others sat. They moved when others froze. They believed when others doubted. And what made their faith remarkable was not the abundance of signs they received, but the scarcity of them. They walked into the unknown with nothing but God's word in their hearts, and that was enough. Let their testimony remind you that your trust in God is not weak when signs are absent. It is strong beyond measure. And perhaps this is what God is doing in you now. Perhaps He has closed the signs so that He can open your spirit. Perhaps He has silenced the confirmations so that He can amplify your conviction. Perhaps He has withheld the evidence so that He can teach you to live by essence, not by appearance. And when you embrace that lesson, you will step into a dimension of faith that cannot be shaken by silence, because your faith is no longer built on what you see. It is built on who God is. Let me speak directly to your heart. If you are in a season of silence right now, do not despise it. Do not run from it. Lean into it. Ask yourself, what is God building in me through this silence? You may not have the answer yet, but I assure you, the silence is sacred. The silence is holy. The silence is evidence that God is preparing something in you that requires deeper trust. And when you come through it, you will not only have your answer, you will have a faith so strong that no answer could ever compare. That is why I say again, with all the conviction in me, God is teaching you to trust Him without a sign. He is not trying to leave you weak. He is making you strong. He is not trying to leave you blind. He is giving you vision. He is not trying to abandon you. He is drawing you closer. And if you will embrace this, if you will surrender to this, if you will declare in your soul, God, you are enough even without the sign, then you will discover a peace, a joy, and a strength that nothing in this world can ever take away. When God begins to teach you to trust Him without a sign, He is stripping away every crutch you thought you needed to survive. He is removing the scaffolding you built around your faith so that what remains is not your reliance on circumstances, not your dependence on people, not your leaning on feelings, but your full and undivided trust in Him alone. Many of you have prayed and expected a lightning bolt, a dream, a sudden confirmation in the sky, but instead there was silence. And in that silence, God was speaking louder than words. He was saying, do you trust me when you cannot trace me? Do you lean on me when you cannot see me? That is the very heart of faith. That is the furnace in which trust is purified, the soil where unshakable belief grows. God knows the danger of a faith that relies only on signs. If He gave you a sign every time you asked, then your faith would not be in Him, but in the sign. You would not seek His face, you would seek His proofs. And God, in His mercy, will not let you reduce Him to a performer of tricks to satisfy your doubts. He is not molding you into a child that demands candy at every step. He is shaping you into a warrior who knows the voice of God, even in silence, who stands firm even when the ground shakes, who believes even when the sky is empty. You see, when you demand a sign before you move, you are not walking by faith, you are bargaining with God. But trust that demands no sign is the highest form of surrender. It is when you look toward the heavens with no evidence in your hands, no guarantees in your sight, and still say, God, I believe you. I will follow you. I will stand on your word alone. That kind of trust shakes the very gates of doubt. That kind of faith draws you closer to God than any sign ever could. God does not want your faith to be fragile. He does not want you to collapse every time your prayer is met with delay. He does not want you to panic every time the sky stays quiet. He wants to forge in you a faith that can stand through storms, through valleys, through deserts, through nights where the stars hide themselves. And the only way to create that faith is to take away the signs you crave and teach you to walk by trust. Trust that does not flinch when the wind howls. Trust that does not crumble when friends abandon. Trust that does not evaporate when prayers take years to be answered. God is not punishing you when He withholds a sign. He is maturing you. He is deepening your roots. He is teaching you to rely not on sight, but on His presence. Not on evidence, but on His word. Not on feelings, but on His promise. That is why some of you have been waiting and waiting. That is why doors have not opened yet. And that is why answers have not come as quickly as you expected. Because God is pulling you away from dependence on signs, teaching you the holy strength of raw. And understand this faith that is built on signs will fail when signs are absent, but faith that is built on God Himself will endure forever. When your faith clings to God rather than to signs, no silence can shake you, no delay can weaken you, no darkness can blind you. Because you know, even when you cannot see Him, He is still there. Even when you cannot hear Him, He is still speaking in ways deeper than words. Even when you cannot feel Him, He is still holding you. Do not mistake God's silence for His absence. Do not mistake His delay for His denial. He is near, closer than the very breath in your lungs. He is watching how you respond when there is no sign, no confirmation, no reassurance. He is testing whether you will still believe, whether you will still worship, whether you will still trust. And every time you choose faith over fear, every time you choose to stand on His word without proof, every time you say, God, even without a sign, I believe you, you are proving that your trust is not shallow. It is strong, it is deep, it is unshakable. God delights in that kind of trust. He delights in those who walk by faith and not by sight. He delights in those who look beyond what they can see and cling to the invisible reality of His presence. And He rewards that trust with strength, with peace, with unbreakable confidence that no storm can steal. And now, let me bring this message to its final weight upon your heart. My friend, when God strips away the signs you crave, He is not abandoning you. He is elevating you. He is calling you to walk on higher ground, where your faith no longer leans on the crutches of outward proof, but stands firmly on the unshakable foundation of who He is. He is whispering into your spirit, will you trust me when there is nothing to see? Will you walk with me when there is nothing to hold on to? Will you believe me when the sky stays silent? This is the very proving ground of faith. It is the furnace where trust is refined until it shines like gold. And it is in these moments when the world around you offers no confirmation, when your prayers seem to echo back with no reply, that God is shaping you into someone who is unmovable, unbreakable, untouchable by fear. For what can shake a soul whose trust rests in God alone? What storm can undo a heart that is anchored in His presence? Even when there are no signs in sight, lift your head and remember God does not need to prove Himself to still be God. He does not need to send you a sign to still be sovereign. He does not need to part the skies to still be faithful. He is God whether the heavens thunder or stay silent. He is God whether the seas roar or stay calm. He is God whether the signs appear or not. And He is worthy of your trust in every season. So let your heart rise above the demand for proof. Let your soul step into the deeper waters of faith. Say to God, even if you give me no sign, I will trust you. Even if the heavens remain quiet, I will believe you. Even if I see nothing with my eyes, I know you are guiding me with your hand. That is the faith that pleases God. That is the trust that moves mountains. That is the surrender that will carry you through every valley, every storm, and every silence. And when you walk this way, trusting God without a sign, you will find that the silence is no longer empty, for it is filled with His presence. The waiting is no longer wasted, for it is building your strength. The unseen is no longer frightening, for it is the very place where God does His greatest work. Trust Him not because of what you see, but because of who He is. For He is faithful, He is sovereign, He is almighty, and He is with you even in the silence.